Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness. Good. Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. As John figures out his stuff, we are Men Talking Mindfulness. We are joined today by Major General Gregg Martin. John, you want to roll?
No, if you could just read that intro, Will. I'll come back.
Hey. Yeah, so today we're going to work to better understand the critical challenges and resilience required to manage mental health struggles within demanding environments such as the military, and why this conversation is essential for awareness and support. Hello, everybody. I'm Will Schneider, joined by my co-host John McCaskill over there in Colorado Springs, and we are honored to welcome retired Major General Gregg Martin, who is the most esteemed military person we've had on the show so far. Right, 2-star general, is that correct? Major General?
Yes, that's correct.
Unbelievable. Major General Martin is a combat veteran and bipolar survivor, and we're going to dig into that today. He served on active duty for 36 years until May 2015. Gregg's career marked by distinction as an airborne ranger engineer, qualified soldier, and Army strategist. Also includes academic achievements with a PhD and 2 master's degrees from MIT, as well as a master's degree in national security strategy from both the Army and Naval War Colleges, and bachelor's degree from the West Point. God, I think you're way too smart for us already, Gregg. So thank you for that. Throughout his personal journey of adversity, recovery, and advocacy, General Martin has become a beacon of hope, emphasizing the importance of mental health awareness and support. Stay with us as we discuss General Martin's inspiring story, highlighting the realities of living with bipolar disorder and the resilience it takes to face such challenges head on. He is also the author of Bipolar General, Forever War with Mental Illness. This episode is set to enlighten and inspire, showcase an intersection of high-performing careers and mental health resilience and awareness. Awesome, gentlemen. I'm just going to keep rolling, John. A couple announcements. Yeah. Hey, so if you want to get in the know of what's going on in Men Talking Mindfulness, please just simply text MTM to 33777. Once again, text MTM, get in the know, to 33777. We have a retreat coming up in Colorado Springs in May. We also have a 10 Cancun giveaways, which will be a lot of fun too. So once again, text MTM to 33777. John, you're going to ground us today.
I am
with our one breath.
I'm all set now. The background's right. I'm not sure what happened there, but hey, we're rolling with it, and we'll
Murphy's
practice.
Law, baby. Murphy's Law.
We'll practice what we preach in practicing mindfulness. And General Martin, great to have you here today. And we're just going to start the show off with one simple grounding breath, and that's for us as much as it is for our audience. And then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the show. So for those watching, for those listening, and for the three of us here, let's just bring our attention to our breath. And we'll start by exhaling, letting it go, emptying, holding empty for a second, a nice deep breath in, starting with your belly, then into your chest. Hold full and relax. Relax. All right, now let's get into this conversation. And as I was saying just before we hit record, I was telling General Martin, who he has said that it's okay for us to call him Gregg. I am retired military, as some of you know who watch the show. And when I speak to a general, it's very difficult for me not to call them general or call them sir. So I may slip up a few times and call them general or sir through the show. But that said, Gregg, great to have you here. The first question we have for you is, when was the moment, and can you share the moment that you realized that your mental health was impacting your military career? And then how did you initially respond to that?
Well, I did not know I had bipolar disorder or any type of mental illness until November of 2014,
wow,
when I was 58 years old. And that was a dozen years after my onset, which the onset was determined later by the VA and the Army. So my onset was in 2003 during the Iraq War, but I went 12 years with bipolar disorder that was unknown, undetected, undiagnosed. And during that time, my bipolar condition just rose dramatically. It kept getting higher and higher until I went into full-blown mania, which is an interesting story where I essentially went into a state of madness, insanity, and my behavior was so completely bizarre and over the top. People started writing anonymous letters to my boss,
Wow.
who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And so basically he did an assessment, called me into his office, and he said, "Greg, I love you like a brother. Your performance as president of National Defense University has been awesome. I give you a grade of A+. No one could have done what you did in just 2 years. But your time at National Defense University is over. You have until 5 p.m. today to resign or I'm going to fire you.
Wow.
And I'm ordering you to get a mental health psychiatric exam this week at Walter Reed." So I got 3 psychiatric evaluations, that month from the psychiatrists at Walter Reed. And all 3 of them, while I was in a state of full-blown mania, out of my mind, crazy, insane, they all 3 said, "You're fit for duty. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly healthy." That was in July. And in the previous years, when I had gone in with depression and said, "Hey, I think there's something wrong with me. I don't have my normal energy and drive and enthusiasm." And 3 times earlier than that, they said, "You're perfectly fine. You're fit for duty. There's nothing wrong with you." So a total of 6 times I got evaluated, 3 when I was really depressed and 3 when I was in mania. And they said, "You're fine." But what happened after getting fired, I spiraled and then crashed into terrible depression and terrifying psychosis. And at that point in November, 4 months after getting fired, I clawed my way back to the hospital and said, "Hey, doc, there is something seriously wrong with me. Please check me out." And this time, they got some collateral information, which is critical in making a psychiatric evaluation. My wife said, "He's definitely depressed now, but earlier, when you evaluated him, he was manic." And so then, finally, the doctors on the 7th try were able to connect the dots and say, "Okay, bipolar disorder type 1 with psychosis," and they got it right. But it wasn't until that evaluation that I realized and believed there was something wrong. Because before that, I was mostly manic. And when you're manic, you feel like you're on top of the world, the smartest person in the world. You feel like Superman. So you don't feel like anything is wrong. Plus, my performance was extremely high. I kept getting promoted. I kept getting assigned to tougher, more prestigious jobs. So I didn't think there was anything wrong at all until that encounter in the doctor's office, in November of 2014.
Now that you mentioned the onset being 12 years prior, what did the onset look like for you?
So in order to have an onset of bipolar disorder, you need 2 things in combination. Number 1, you need the genetic predisposition. And I didn't call it the gene because scientists have not yet discovered a bipolar gene that you can clearly identify, through a blood test or something like that. But they know that there is something in the genes that has to be there in order to come down with and have a bipolar onset. So you need the genetics, and then you need a triggering event, which is typically something that's extremely stressful, thrilling, euphoric, pressure-packed, dangerous. And so for me, the triggering event was the Iraq War. I was a brigade commander in charge of, thousands of troops, combat engineers. And, we were, in many respects, the lead troops on the battlefield, clearing the way for the armor and the infantry and everybody else. So we had months of training and preparation in Germany and in Kuwait, which was incredibly stressful, especially for commanders, and my command was of engineers. And, the Corps commander, the 3-star that I worked for, he said, he put his finger in my chest and said, "Hey, the Corps, 100,000 troops, We absolutely are depending on the engineers to clear the way, to bridge the rivers, to put in airfields, helipads, clear minefields, clear IEDs, et cetera, et cetera. And so the pressure was enormous. And then in Kuwait, we were training really hard, really intensively, doing all kinds of live fire drills. But we did terrain models of what it was going to be like in Iraq, and we attacked through all of those. Meanwhile, we were getting hit with Scud missiles, on a fairly regular basis. And but when we actually attacked across the border, I felt like 100 pounds were lifted off my shoulders, and I felt like Superman. I was fearless. I felt bulletproof, like nothing could hurt me. My energy level just shot through the roof. My brain was working like a laser beam computer, where I could, look at the battlefield and I could anticipate and solve very complex problems rapidly on the battlefield. Essentially, I would identify and solve problems before anybody else knew there was a problem. All of this is reflective of my manic state, my brain being in a state of mania, which really elevated my performance. But I was all over the battlefield. My energy levels were incredible. I didn't need sleep. And so the mania really made me perform much, much better.
And this was was that was that the moment that you started to experience yourself, different? Like when you first attacked and you had this kind of incredible energy and this manic episode? Was that, because what I'm asking is that like the first episode that you had, during this invasion, or is there something prior? Like what was that moment, or when was that moment? Like you're like, oh wait, something's different, or was that the moment that you experienced your first episode?
Prior to the invasion, when we were in Kuwait, the engineers, we were responsible for identifying and then pre-clearing as much of the border obstacle system as we could. So we were doing reconnaissance along on this highway road right along the Iraq-Kuwait border. And my driver and I, we would play really loud, intense music. We weren't in Iraq, we were in Kuwait, and I felt this incredible high that would come over me when we would be cruising on this asphalt road. To the right was Kuwait, to the left would be, the fence, the big ditch, the border obstacle complex that we would soon be clearing in combat under fire. And I felt high as a kite. And I remember distinctly feeling that. And the only thing I attributed it to was, this is war. This is the prelude of war. And amazing things happen to people in combat. Even though we weren't in combat yet, we were very soon going to go. And then the next big thing I remember was, and so this was euphoric with the music. Then when we attacked into Iraq, I just remember this incredibly thrilling, high feeling that I was some kind of a Superman. And what I thought it was, God lifting me up and giving me this extra energy to be, a super performer in combat, to help our forces succeed and to help America accomplish its goals. So I just thought it was a blessing from God that God was helping me by giving me this extra power. Again, I didn't think anything that it's wrong. I didn't think it was weird. I just felt like, wow, this is amazing. I'm so grateful that I have all this extra power and energy, and I felt incredibly good. Later, psychiatrists told me that when you go into mania, it's like being very high on cocaine or ecstasy. All that dopamine in your brain is just elevating things, and that's where I was at.
Wow. And that's a difference, like bipolar too, right? So you go into deep depression, or you're in this grandiose state of like mania. It's kind of like the two parts of the bipolar. Is it just to get this, kind of get a baseline of bipolar?
So bipolar type 1 is what I have. And bipolar type 1 means you have real mania. not low-level mania. And so you go into real mania, which is extremely dangerous and leads to, deaths, heart attacks, strokes, encounters with the police, really reckless, crazy behavior, getting arrested. So I had that high-level mania, and then also depression. But I was lucky during my years of, intense bipolar disorder, which I still have it now, but it's pretty much being managed and under control. And then less on the depression side. Bipolar 2 is more depression and then blips into what they call hypomania. And hypomania means below mania. So something's going on in the brain and you blip up with extra dopamine and endorphins and so forth. And you do have these advantages, but you don't go way up into mania.
Oh, thank you for clarifying.
Definitely. That's important for our audience to understand, and thank you for that. And just so you know, we have a comment here coming in live on our YouTube feed. It says, combat engineers saved our convoy in 2003 by clearing a minefield we knew nothing about with no maps or GPS. So there you go. Right off the bat, you've got somebody who you saved their convoy, or your people, your combat engineers saved them. So that's always great to see. So
yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to, if we have time at the end, to find out, who you are, what unit were you in, and where did this event take place. That would be really cool.
There you go. So I'll tell you, it's Shannon Hanks is who commented. But Shannon, if you're still watching, please send us your information, and we'll make sure that we connect you with Gregg. As far as once you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder, how was that received in the military? I know there's this big time fear when you're in the military, specifically if you have some type of top secret clearance. You're like, I don't want to admit to any type of mental health challenge because I'm going to lose my clearance, or I'm going to lose the ability to carry a weapon. How was that received in the military, and how did you manage that?
So November 2014, I went to the doctor on my own, said, hey, I'm really sick. There's something wrong. Please evaluate me. And they evaluated me. They diagnosed me with bipolar disorder type 1 with psychosis. And when they did, I gave the doctor a big hug and said, thank you, because I knew there's something wrong with me. I just didn't know what it was. And now with this diagnosis, I have a target, a face that I can go after and start trying to fight it. And I can learn all I can about bipolar disorder and really work to get better and get this under control. So I knew there was a stigma about all kinds of mental health. I wasn't aware of how strong the stigma was about bipolar disorder. I mean, I'd say next to schizophrenia, bipolar disorder is the most stigmatized mental illness. But I basically, right there in the office, I said, because two of my sons live with bipolar disorder, and they got diagnosed before me. Wow. So I had studied bipolar disorder. I knew a lot about it, and I tried to really support them. So I knew that scientifically, bipolar disorder is a physiological illness or disease of the brain. It's not due to lack of character, lack of willpower, not trying hard enough. It has nothing to do with those things. But the stigma exists because people they're fearful of the condition and they're ignorant. They don't know the scientific truth or facts. So I said, I am not going to be in any way stigmatized, ashamed, embarrassed. I'm just not going to go there at all. And so I made a decision right there in the doctor's office that I am going to own this. This is my disease. I've been really healthy my whole life. Now I've got a serious brain disease. I own it. And I'm not going to apologize to anybody. So I went, and the doctor and we talked over the next few weeks. And the doctor, he realized the stigma within the military. And one of the things he did, which I think was wrong, but he did it, he kept my bipolar diagnosis under the radar screen, and he didn't put it in my official records until the day before I retired, because he didn't want adverse consequences against me. But in so doing, he failed to give me the kind of, tough love, the hard treatment that I needed to get better. Like ultimately lithium, the medication, is what really saved me. He didn't put me in inpatient, which I really needed, and it later helped me a lot. He didn't assign a therapist to work with me. And what he was trying to do was to prevent sending up a red scar cluster, which would have alerted everybody that Martin has bipolar disorder. And so he did it to be nice to me and to take care of me. But in so doing, he prolonged my terrible condition, and it could have led to my death or my suicide. So that was not a good thing that he did. But the reason this really was not a factor, nobody was looking at pulling my security clearance. There were no promotions on the horizon, because the day I got fired in July of 2014, I was essentially told, okay, you have to retire as soon as we can get you to retire. We're gonna retire you. And so once that decision was made and I was pulled out of my command and put in kind of a holding pattern, I didn't need a security clearance. I wasn't around classified information. I wasn't handling a weapon. I mean, I was pretty harmless. And so nothing was really done. But I did, of course, tell my chain of command that I'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So they were aware. They were very supportive, very understanding. And they said, hey, look, take between now and the time you retire, take it to get ready for all your medical stuff, get your logistical stuff ready for your move, and get ready to retire from the Army. So they were really good about it. So that's kind of how it went down.
Wow. And a question. So if it wasn't, because it sounds like, you said your sons are also they have the predisposition to bipolar, or actually are have medication now in order to kind of help them kind of cope with it. And then because the question is, it's like, if it wasn't for this heavy burden within the military, would you have manifested into bipolar disorder?
First, I'll answer the second question, then come back to the sons.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
It's unknowable whether I would have, had an onset or not. But in all likelihood, if I had chosen a different career path with less stress, less intensity, less pressure, less of all those things that you have in the military, if I'd have had a more calm, reasonable, peaceful, tranquil, with mindfulness and all that, there's a very, very good chance I never would have had an onset of bipolar disorder. And it's interesting, both the VA, Veterans Administration, and the Department of the Army medical people both attributed my onset of bipolar disorder as 100% combat related. So they both pinpointed it, not just on the service, but on the combat experience. So, and those were two independent, unrelated investigations done by two different organizations. So I think that's pretty interesting. As far as my sons go, both of them started, unknown to my wife and I, started having psychiatric problems, probably about the age of 14 or 15, with depression and anxiety and things like that. But they kept it, hidden and quiet. But about 17, it got so bad for both of them that they had to go get psychiatric treatment. And at that point, they were both, and these are in different years, but they both got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And one of them was hospitalized. It continued to get worse for a while. Both of them took medication, and the medication did a certain amount of good, but not really. I still don't, I'm not sure if they've ever gotten the combination of medicines quite right. But so both of them are now in their 30s. Life has been hard, especially with relationships, employment, and schooling. It's just really hard because of what bipolar disorder does to you. But one of them is really working hard to get better, and working with the VA, a therapist, psychiatrist, taking medications. It's really doing all the things that you need to do. The other one is said, nope, I took medication for a while. I'm not going to take it anymore. I don't like it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I'm just not going to take it. And, he's in his 30s. And so, we've cautioned him and counseled him, and all kinds of people have said, you're playing Russian roulette with your brain. And, bipolar disorder is nothing to play with. It can kill you.
Right.
For sure. And so he's really playing with fire.
You mentioned, what they were experiencing in their personal life, and you mentioned a little bit of what you were experiencing in your professional life. How does bipolar disorder manifest in your personal life, and what has it done for your personal life? And how did you navigate these challenges?
Well, I was born with a bipolar brain, and I was born on the bipolar spectrum, meaning I was on a glide path towards my onset of bipolar disorder. And this condition started at least as a teenager in high school, maybe earlier. But it manifested itself right away in high energy, enthusiasm, drive, creativity, problem-solving ability. So in high school, I was like, the all-star athlete, one of the top students, top leader. And it helped me because I had this condition called hyperthymia, which is a near continuous state of low-level mania. So when you think about a low level of mania, you're just getting this constant infusion of extra dopamine, endorphins, and others that elevated me from a normal state, steady state, to mild mania. And think what that does for you. It's like I was on a low dose of cocaine or ecstasy. It just lifted me and boosted me. And, throughout this time, as I'm going through high school and then West Point and then the Army, I'm steadily climbing up the bipolar spectrum. I'm getting more and more of these chemicals. So, I finish high school, then I go to West Point. My energy's higher. My problem solving is higher. My athletic ability is better. Then I go out in the Army, or Army Ranger School. Even a higher jump. And then I'm out in the Army as a leader, a platoon leader, company commander, battalion commander, brigade commander. And I just keep going up, up, up. And my performance was unbelievable. I kept getting promoted. In some cases, I got promoted early or below the zone, they call it. I got picked for all the schools. I was an honor grad at just about every school. The Army sent me to MIT and said, hey, Martin, your mission is to get one master's degree in engineering. I came out of there with 2 masters and a PhD. Now that is not normal behavior. I could read and absorb and I digest a book a night. I could solve all these complex problems rapidly. My brain was like a computer. And that was, that was really reflective of my manic brain. And my mania was not too high. It was just right to be a very, very high performer. And it continued getting higher and higher. And it's interesting, there's a theory called the kindling theory of bipolar disorder, where it starts as a little flame, like probably back, maybe when I was a baby, maybe in junior high, but this little flame. And then through your life, every time there is a bipolar related event, whatever it is, it's like throwing kindling on the flame or sticks or little logs or bigger logs. And so the fire kept growing and getting bigger and bigger until by 2014, I was a raging bonfire, when I went into full-blown mania. And so there was really, the only thing to navigate was the depression. The mania, it helped me. I felt great, did incredibly well. My performance was super high. But when I would fall into mania, and I fell into mania a number of times, I felt terrible with the depression. So I would go from high energy to no energy, interested in everything to interested in nothing, a flaming extrovert to a painful introvert, being involved in things. Instead, I'd go to my office, I'd shut the door, I was confused. I was indecisive. I couldn't make a decision. It was absolutely horribly painful. And it was the inverse opposite of how I normally was.
Now that manic side, now that you've got it under control, because I mean, when you hear everything that it did for you, it sounds amazing, right? I want my brain to be like a computer. I want to be leading well. I want to be absorbing a book a night. But now you've got it under control. How does that feel for you now that you don't, I'm assuming that you don't have these manic episodes. How do you feel now?
Well, fortunately, my hyperthymic personality, this low-level mania, it came back. So once I pulled out of my bipolar hell in 2016, the hyperthymic personality of this continuous low-level mania, it returned to me. And so I am mostly very up, very high, very energetic, with occasional dips into very minor, not really serious depression. So I've still got the bipolar disorder going on, but the lithium stabilizes my brain and it keeps me from going too high or too low. But the danger of mania is, as wonderful as it was, when you're in mania and you go up, there's no telling what's going to happen. I mean, when I could easily have been arrested, shot, spent all of our money, done terrible things that ruined my marriage and family, in my career. I mean, I got fired, but worse things could have happened, given how bad my state was. That mania is great, but the danger is it goes too high and it brings you down and destroys you and it brings you in a path of destruction. And so I know, scientifically that is what would probably happen. And so I don't want to go there. I mean, I may sometimes think about what it was like to be really manically high and say, wow, that was incredible. I was like Superman. I believed I was the smartest guy in the world. I thought I was sent from God to, transform the Department of Defense. I saw demons attack our house. I saw the Holy Spirit come down. I thought I could fly.
Wow.
All those things were part of my mania. But if I go up again, I'm going to come back down really hard into terrible depression. And depression is absolutely horrible. And I lived through 2 years of bipolar hell where all I wanted to do was to die. I didn't want to live. It was horrible. And so given all of that and what, the realities of bipolar disorder, both the mania and the depression, I don't want to go there. I want to stay in the steady state and play it safe and have a good life.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. What was could you go a little bit deeper into the depressive state? Like we talked so much about, it sounds like you're in the movie Limitless, in the manic state. And it also seems like there's also no checks and balances like internally. It's just like go, do. And then depression, what was that kind of struggle? Like how dark would you get? How deep would it go? And then also what was the ultimate salvation in that, or is it, or just swing up into a manic episode and you would just kind of rescue yourself in that regard as you swing back into the opposite of the other, polarity.
Right. Well, the first thing is that when the brain has bipolar disease, it does what it wants when it wants to. So it goes into mania and then goes into depression when it wants, according to its own timetable of a sick brain. It has nothing to do with your willpower or what you want to do. So the brain will suddenly decide, whoops, time to go into mania, and it'll just on its own start overproducing and distributing all these powerful chemicals, which drives you into mania. And then it'll say, well, been manic long enough, let me jump into depression, and it starts underproducing and distributing, and then that drives you down into depression. And then there are periods where you're like flat, where you're in a, quote unquote, normal range. But I told you a little bit about the mania. So the depression, my first real depressive incident came when we got back from Iraq. And the thrill and the ecstasy of combat behind me, I crashed into 10 months of depression.
Oof.
It was really bad, but it wasn't bipolar hell. It wasn't depression hell. I was able to, and this is where the Army structure helped me. I was able to get up, go to work, do my job. I was absolutely miserable. I had no energy. I was disinterested in everything. I really hated life. It was terrible. But I functioned, and I did a good enough job that I kept moving along in the Army. And I had several more incidents like that over the next decade. But after I got fired in 2014, and I spiraled and crashed into hopeless, crippling depression with terrifying psychosis, and I got my diagnosis, I then went from bad to worse. And I spent 2 years in what I call bipolar hell. And what I would describe it as, no interest in anything, no interest, no energy to do anything. So I used to be an avid athlete, skier, swimmer, boater, all that. We lived on a lake, didn't do anything. Had no interest in boating, swimming, hiking. In the winter, I didn't want to ski or snowshoe, which I used to be, really, really into all that stuff. So no interest in anything, no interest in reading books, no interest in people, didn't want to talk to anybody, completely withdrawn, didn't answer emails or text messages, even from friends who wanted to get a hold of me. I had nonstop visions of my own death. I wanted to die. And I had one vision was that people were spying on me and that they were plotting to get me arrested, put in jail, where I would be beaten, tortured, and then stabbed to death. And I would die in a pool of my own blood, gurgling in the blood. And I would see that continuously, and I could smell it and feel it. Then I had another one where this invisible force grabbed me around the chest and threw me underneath a speeding 18-wheeler truck, ripping my arms and legs and head off and throwing them to the side of the road. And then there were others as well. Every morning, a boa constrictor snake with its eyes blazing and its tongue flickering would come up out of the woods, wrap itself around me, and crush the life out of me. And so the rest of the day, I would lay on my back, just staring into space, ruminating about every mistake I had ever made in my life, going back to when I was a little kid. And then when I finally get agitated, I would dive headfirst on a hardwood floor, banging my head, punching myself in the head and face, yelling and screaming angrily at God for ruining my life. So, that's just a touch of what it was like. But I mean, every day hoping and praying for my death. But luckily, my wife and a friend from the Army were able to get me into a really good VA hospital, which really helped save me. And I can talk about that. But let me mention real quick, when I went in for the intake, and this is really important, the doctor said the usual questions: are you suicidal? No. Do you want to hurt yourself? No. Do you want to hurt others? No. That's what everybody asks. Mm-hmm. But then he said, and he's the only doctor who ever asked it of me, he said, do you ever have morbid thoughts of death and dying? I said, yes, all the time, every day, continuously. And he said, okay, tell me about them. So I told him what I just told you guys. And he said, okay, those are passive suicidal ideations.
Wow.
That means that you want to die. Even though you may not want to kill yourself, you want somebody or something else to kill you. And the problem with these passive ideations is they can morph into active ideations. And then the next thing you know, you want to kill yourself, you develop a plan, and you end your life. And so with that, he put me in the inpatient facility, locked up, inpatient with a bunch of other veterans with mental illness. And that was a good experience. I loved the staff. They were fantastic. And I got a lot out of that experience. But what it did is it stopped my decline. So I had been going down for a year and a half, and it arrested my decline, but I didn't get better. That wasn't for 6 more months when we finally tried lithium, a natural element out of the earth. And with lithium, within just 3 days, all my symptoms lifted. They went away. And I suddenly felt great. I had, interest, energy, enthusiasm, started doing stuff again, hiking, swimming, boating, reading. And so it was really the lithium which stabilized my brain and put me on the right track.
Yeah,
Wow.
and doing all those things not in a manic way, but just in a kind of a normal person enjoying their life.
Yes.
Got it. Wow.
Well, I know when I transitioned out of the military, I had planned for my transition for about 2 years, and even with that planning, transitioning out of the military, and then kind of losing my identity, if you will, or at least hanging up my identity when I hung up my uniform, that was a difficult piece for me. For you, how was that transition? I mean, it sounds like it was very quick relative to how it could have been. You didn't have much time. You were fired, and then they said, "Hey, you need to prepare for retirement." How was that for you, especially when you had this disorder on top of it?
It was really hard. So it was about a 2-year period of, acute hopeless depression with terrifying psychosis. And I call that period bipolar hell. And so at the end of my career, I was extremely sick. My bipolar was very, very serious and acute. And so the whole transition thing was extremely difficult. Luckily, I had they called him an XO. I had a young captain, real sharp guy, who the commander gave on loan to me to help me through this process, which was great. So, he took care of most of the paperwork and the meetings and all the stuff I had to go to. All I had to do was sort of stick with him, and he took care of it. So if it wasn't for him, Captain Jeff Kennedy, I would have been out of luck.
Wow.
Because I was incapable of doing this stuff. And then as far as the move goes, we were in government quarters in Washington, D.C. at Fort McNair. And we had to move to New Hampshire, where we owned a house. And my wife did pretty much everything. I was worthless. I was a vegetable. I contributed almost nothing.
Wow.
And so she took care of all that. So if it wasn't for the captain and my wife, I would have just probably been laying on the floor, like a basket case. And so that was very difficult. And then we moved to New Hampshire, and New Hampshire was difficult because I was so sick, and the military was gone. My purpose for living had gone, and then my brain was a mess. And like I described on the depression side, I had no energy, no nothing. Mm-hmm. But once I got stabilized on lithium, I started coming back. I realized, hey, I've got a future. Before that, I had no hope. I thought my life is hopeless. I'm never going to get better. I'm going to be sick like this my whole life unless I could, mercifully just die. And so once I started getting better, I had to build a glide path back to health and success and happiness. It was interesting. One of the things people don't realize about depression, after my 2 years of depression, I lost about 20 pounds of muscle, at least 20 pounds. I went from doing like 25 pull-ups to where I couldn't do any. I went from doing, close to 100 push-ups to where I could, barely do 3. I was in horrible shape. And that's the toll it took on me, not just mentally, but physically. People don't realize that.
Yeah.
But once I kind of got on my feet, we made a decision to move to Florida because of the sunshine, the warmth, the brightness,
Vitamin D.
as medication for the brain. And once we got down here to Florida, I felt better right away. And then we said, well, we need to meet some friends. And so we had a strategy to make a friend every day and then be a friend and try to be, really good friends with people. And then I really struggled with purpose. in the military, you have a purpose. It's given to you.
Right.
I mean, you were a naval officer, John, and I mean, your mission and purpose is the U.S. Navy. They give it to you, and then you focus on it, and that gives you all the motivation and the drive and everything you need.
Indeed.
So now I didn't have anything. And so it took me a while to figure out. I knew I needed a purpose, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I really got intensely into church, a couple different churches, and Bible studies and the like, and that helped me a lot spiritually. And somewhere along the line, I realized it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I've got a mission and a purpose, and it's sharing my bipolar story to help stop the stigma, promote recovery, and save lives. That's it. And it's been my life and my focus ever since. And I do it by speaking, writing, and conferring with people. And so that was really a turning point in my post-bipolar hell life. Once I went into extreme mania, extreme depression, and then I came back with lithium, and I'm in kind of a healthy, steady middle zone. And once I got in that middle zone, I think it was the purpose statement of sharing my story. I think that was the real turning point in my life, because Beautiful. It's bigger than myself. I'm serving other people. It feels great. You get great feedback, make a difference. It's really good.
It's one of the reasons we do this show is giving back. It's a purpose and an identity, and we know that we're helping others. And that, with that in mind, we do have a lot of military people who listen to our show and watch our show. For those who are still current active duty service members or currently serving, who may be experiencing their own mental health challenges, what advice would you give to them? Because I know, like we mentioned before, there's that stigma, there's the fear of the loss of security clearances and the ability to carry a weapon. What advice would you give to those who are still active duty or serving, and how to handle that?
I would say, if you think you may have some sort of mental disorder or challenge or illness, or if other people, family, friends, work colleagues think, I would go seek professional medical treatment and advice. I would do that right away. And the reason is, this stuff is nothing to play with. It can kill you. Typically someone with a mental illness, it usually, if it's untreated, will destroy your family, your marriage, your career, your finances. It'll often lead to homelessness, addictions, incarceration, violence, death, or suicide. So, I mean, that's kind of the path you're going to probably go down if you don't get help. Right. But on the other hand, if you do get help, the chances are very high that you can live a happy, healthy, purposeful life, and things will be good. Now, the issue about the security clearance and all that, I continue to hear all kinds of different things. I've been at lots of conferences and talks where the professional psychiatrists in the military say, it's not true that you're going to lose your security clearance. It's not true that you're going to get pulled off the promotion list. That stuff's not true. That may have been true, 20 years ago, but it's not true anymore. Right. The psychiatrists will say, look, the military has invested enormous amounts of money in every single service member, and we're going to do everything we can to accommodate you and your condition to the extent that we can. There are exceptions like bipolar type 1, schizophrenia. They're considered, too dangerous to continue to serve. But all these other conditions, bipolar type 2, depression, PTSD, and the others, can be treated with medication and therapy and so forth. So the professional psychiatrists and the medical people say, hey, we're not going to throw you out just because you come forward with a mental condition. But the other side of the coin is, I hear this over and over again from lower enlisted who say, I don't believe it, because my friend went to see the therapist or the psychiatrist, mental health people, and now he's in trouble. He's not going to get promoted. his platoon sergeant, his first sergeant, his command master chief, whoever is got a target on his back because they're telling him, "Oh, you're weak, you're a wimp, you can't handle it," and so forth. So I think the truth is somewhere in between. I know that it's much better now than it was before 9/11, 23 years ago, because back then people were getting kicked out for PTSD, depression, for pretty much everything. But over the years of war, the 20 years of war, with people doing back-to-back tours in combat, the military has taken a much more accommodating position in allowing people to serve. So I think the truth is the accuracy is probably somewhere in the middle.
Well, yeah. I know we're coming close on the hour time that we had promised you before, and I know you have the book out that we mentioned at the beginning. What inspired you to write the book? I mean, obviously your challenges inspired you. There it is, and how is it being received? Tell us a little bit about the book.
The book, I wrote it in order to share my lessons learned and experience with other people to help save them, their family members, their friends, their colleagues. So I did it purely to spread my story in order to make a positive difference and help other people. The book is doing fantastically well. It is selling rapidly, all over the United States, all over the world. It's being translated into foreign languages. The military, the veterans community, the professional medical community, Fortune 500 companies, I mean, they're eating it up. They're gobbling it up, asking me to speak. It's actually even being used in medical schools to teach bipolar disorder and psychiatry. That's how well it's thought of. So it's doing really, really well. And I've gotten, loads of opportunities to, in fact, it's really overloading my plate, opportunities to speak and to,
Wonderful.
So it's great. I'm really happy with it. So, and I think the book is a great resource. And you can order it through, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, the Naval Institute Press, or anywhere that books are sold. You can walk into a bookstore and they can order the book for you.
Fantastic. And for those who are not watching, the General did hold up the book, and we mentioned it before. The title of the book is Bipolar General, My Forever War with Mental Illness. So there it is.
This makes me think, Greg, maybe, and if you want us to, we can put you in touch with Doc Shauna Springer, who's been on our show, and she has been working within the military and helping veterans and active military, understand, their mental health issues and stuff like that. And she's been an incredible advocate. Yeah, she's really, really fantastic, and really has an incredible platform, which is helping so many different people, so many different men, really, and military people and personnel, all of them, kind of like wake up to this, mental health crisis that we're in, but also, that it's okay to have, to just be where you are with your mental, whatever affliction, if you will, but also like helping people out of it, not just, with talk therapy, but she's doing like MDMA therapy. She's doing ketamine therapy as well, to help people overcome and kind of get back to, a little bit of like levity, if you will, or just kind of a normal
baseline.
Baseline. If you want, I would love, to put you in touch with her, or even listen to our episode with Doc Shauna Springer. She's just really incredible, powerful force in the military community and helping them with their mental health.
I would love it if you connected me with her.
Yeah,
and with
absolutely.
Anybody else you think might be interested in the story. Just anybody that you think would be interested.
For sure.
Feel free.
We'll do that.
Hey, I was just going to mention there's some really good resources for bipolar disorder and mental health. If you got a 30 seconds, I can tell you.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, yes.
I actually think my book is probably the best one, and
of course,
it's just, and I'm getting that feedback from lots of doctors. The second one, there's a really cool innovation called Bieffect.com. It was invented by a brilliant professor at University of Illinois named Alex Liao. And what it does, it uses a special keyboard on your iPhone to monitor changes in mood.
Wow.
And there's nothing like this. And so you can track mood swings and then take proactive response against them. There's another, it's a company called, if you go to grithope.com, it's a company that focuses in mental health and resiliency. They specialize with the military, veterans, first responders, hospitals, really, really good stuff. Then there's a movie that I'm in, it's a film it's called brainstormthefilm.com. It is incredible. It will be a PBS documentary film next year in 2025. But check it out, brainstormthefilm.com and biaffect.com, biaffect.com. So those are just a few resources that I would recommend.
Perfect. We will make sure those are in the show notes for everyone to check out. And thank you so much for sharing those. It's really, really appreciated. I'm going to check them out. I'm really curious about that iPhone one. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it'd be great. Talk to Dr. Springer. I mean, I think you guys really, I mean, she's, I don't know. I just think you guys have a lot of synergy, obviously, what you guys are doing. And to have a voice like yours, especially you're such an incredibly decorated veteran, this just can help amplify and kind of rescue people out of their mental health crisis. So I really love the work you're doing. I mean, because it's like over and over and over again, how people find our show. Some people, they search, they're like mental health podcasts, and they find our podcast because it's something that we're constantly talking about because, of the stigma that has existed for a very, very long time. But now, in the last, 4 or 5 years is kind of just people and men have gotten more vulnerable. Now it's more accepting to say like, hey, I'm kind of feeling depressed or I'm kind of feeling like shit, instead of always just kind of toughing it out. It's just wonderful that we're having this conversation today, as well as the conversation that's going to continue and hopefully just kind of pull us into baseline, like John said.
There you go. Yeah. Well,
could I make one comment to the audience?
Please.
If any of you out there, if you like the book, please consider writing a book review and posting it on Amazon and Goodreads. That because what it does is it gives the story a bounce. It amplifies it a little bit, and could make a difference in somebody getting the information or not. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. And yes, sir. And thank you for being here with us today. We'll wrap it up here in a second. For those, who tune in regularly, we wrap it up with a grounding practice at the end. But if you tune out before that, we just want to thank you for tuning in. And we want to thank the General again for being here with us today. If you enjoyed the show and if you got something out of it, please share it with your friends, family, colleagues, whoever you think could benefit from hearing the General's message. So that said, hey, Will, I'll kick it over to you for the closing practice and to wrap it up in a bow.
Yeah, let's get back to baseline by just finding some really easy, simple breathing. That's really what it takes. I mean, in order, bipolar disorder and being in mania or being in deep depression is something different. But if you're not dealing with that, I mean, just to take a couple breaths and kind of helps things to naturally relax the mind and the body, right? Getting to that nice little baseline of calm, cool, and connected, and getting out of that fog of distress, and really and when you're like natural calm and natural clarity and all like the wonderful things that come when we just relax the body, and all it takes is just 5 breaths just like this. And we're going to do our BAMO breath, John, brought to us by Dr. Seth Hickerson, another veteran, Greg, who's been on our show and is a really good friend of ours. And all we're going to do is inhale for 4 seconds through the nose and exhale nice and long and slow out the mouth, like you're kind of pushing the breath through a straw. And that's it. We're going to do 5 times. I like to close my eyes when I do this. You can do this while you're driving, or obviously you want to keep your eyes open when you're driving. But I like to close my eyes so I can really feel more of my breath and kind of release so much of that, the digital spectrum, which just brings up so much information, activates our brain in such a big way. So let's do that. So close the eyes if you can. Exhale the breath all the way out. Maybe sit with a nice kind of a poised and a longer dignified posture to bring your lungs forward. And let's take that first inhale for 4 seconds. 3, big breath, 2, 1, and exhale out the mouth. Nice, calm, smooth, and slow, like a calm, warm summer breeze. All right, and again, in for 4. Out, nice and easy. Again, in. And out. And just 2 more. In, big belly breath, so really deep breath, broad breath. Fill to the top. And let it go again. And just see if on your exhale, maybe just see if you can ground yourself a little bit more intently into the here and now through your body. And we'll do 1 more. In, big belly breath, 4. And let it go out. Before you open your eyes, or just kind of notice if your eyes are open, just notice if that has changed anything. It's just like literally maybe 1 minute of breathing. And this can really, maybe help change the course of your day, maybe change the course of your life by just taking a couple breaths, calming the mind and the body, letting go of that fog of distress and tapping into the here and now. So it's good. Open your eyes when you're ready. Major General, thank you for everything you've said today, being so vulnerable, being so authentic, sharing your story, because it's just so incredibly helpful to all of the audience that we have out there that's listening. So really appreciate you coming on today.
Will and John, thank you both very much. I appreciate you connecting with me, and you did a great job. The show is fantastic. Thank you,
sir. Appreciate that. For our audience, until next time, we'll see you later.
Peace. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.